Hey, it's John from Tech Today. So this is the chatbot arena board, and Gemini 2.5, that is Google, is at the top of the list. I mentioned the other day that in my experience over the past several months, or a few months, I thought 2.5 was the best model in terms of writing functional code in one shot. Definitely a bit better than OpenAI and Anthropic. 3.7 Pro is the one I'm subscribed to with Anthropic. I'm not subscribed to a Pro version of OpenAI. But despite that fact, it feels like every month or so there's a new company, new model at the top of the leaderboard. So for sure, as I've written, commoditization is taking place. There's compression in terms of the differentiation between the models. And I think that's going to continue. There'll be less and less difference. And I wrote last week that I thought the big opportunity in AI was for somebody to write the middleware layer or the operating system that would allow various models and various applications, across third parties to communicate with one another. That connective tissue needs to be built in order for agentic AI to really fulfill its promise. The other thing I've talked about mostly in the back half of last year was open source. And if I toggle over here, this is Google Trends. So if you type in open source, this is kind of what you get live. Third week in July, that was when Zuckerberg published his post about OpenAI, open source, and how he believed that would be the future of Meta insofar that AI is concerned. This peak here is DeepSeek, the R1 release that took place at the front part of Q1. And it would make sense that open source, I think the number I put out there, I said within 5 years, 80% of the models in production, of the Gen AI models in production, not existing ML models and different permutations of AI that have been around for 20 plus years, but Gen AI in particular, 80% of those models would be open source within 5 years. Because I think most use cases, 80% of the use cases, aren't going to require the biggest bleeding edge LLM. And I would venture to guess that within the next few years that the biggest, best LLMs will in fact be open source. Just because you have more hands on them, more people kicking the tires, more people iterating, versus the closed architecture approach of OpenAI and Microsoft and Anthropic. So I think those will be the two big trends: OpenAI, open source, and an operating system, a middleware layer, if you will, for AI. So what does that mean if you're OpenAI, if you're Anthropic? And what you can do is you can use those dollars, those investment dollars, and OpenAI is in negotiation for a $340 billion valuation in their latest in-process round. But you can use that capital in part to make the user experience as engaging as possible. And that would be sort of one way to differentiate. So aside from the efficacy of the model, in terms of how it ranks across the various benchmarks, aside from sort of bleeding edge R&D on the agentic AI front, if you can keep a lot of people, sort of everyday users, even if they're not writing any code, they're just running prompts to answer questions and such, or kind of the simple tasks that I do, for example, running document summaries and things like this. If you make the user interface a destination, and you've got a couple billion users, there's obviously a lot of value there. And that would be one way for the proprietary models to differentiate from the open source guys. The open source products tend to not focus on, and I'm not just talking about LLMs, I'm thinking about software more broadly, but open source initiatives tend to focus on functionality, security, the mechanics of the application or model. The technical elements tends to be the focus because they're typically technical people that are participating in that effort. There's less a focus on user interface and user experience. And what I will say for OpenAI is that I don't know if it's color scheme, I don't know if it's layout, combination of both, I'm sure. But I find their user interface, it's the one that I prefer. And I think I prefer it because of its simplicity. I would say that Anthropic, Claude 3.7, their UI is similar. I think I prefer OpenAI. It may sound silly, but the color scheme, the layout just feels, I just feel a little bit more productive when using it. And this is a free version of OAI, mind you. I'm not a pro subscriber. But I end up spending actually more time on Anthropic because I feel the pro version 3.7 Claude Sonnet is a little bit more effective, particularly as it relates to coding, than the free version of OAI. And I may feel differently if you ask me a couple of weeks from now. I've only been using Google Gemini 2.5 for a couple of days. That's free, by the way, for now. I think you get 1 million free tokens. I think I'm at 100,000, so I've got a bit more to go yet. But I find that user interface to be pretty engaging and simple, and it's pleasant to work with. And that's aside from the fact that it's very effective. But I think at some point the closed systems, I mean, you could argue they're neck and neck now, with 2.5 being a bit ahead. But it's just going to be a cat and mouse game, I think, in terms of the efficacy of the models, if you will. And it's going to be more, who wins will be more a function of how many people that product can draw into its orbit. That's really going to be the secret sauce, I think. I think UI, UX, user experience, user interface is going to be absolutely key. But table stakes has to be that your model is effective. Otherwise, people aren't going to use it. So sort of a collection of random thoughts. That's all for now. See you next time.